Welcome to Warping Fist.
Batman Arkham Asylum massively altered the landscape within superhero gaming. Prior to its release, most superhero games were tie-ins that were only made to piggyback off the success of the films and shows they were based off of. As a result, a majority of these games were mediocre and clearly lacked any form of passion behind them.
Use your mutant powers and stealth to uncover your past and a few other surprises.
I don't like surprises.
Batman Arkham Asylum proved that superhero games could stand alongside some of the best releases at the time. However, Rocksteady was not the only ones who strived for a more high-profile superhero game. In 2009, Fear 3 and MechAssault developers Day One Studios were working on a new Batman game based off the 1989 comic Batman Gotham by Gaslight. Unfortunately, the game got shelved due to several circumstances. So, what happened to this unorthodox Batman game, and why was it cancelled in the end?
Let's get started.
After the mediocre success of their game Fracture, Day One Studios was in search of their next project. They most likely saw the popularity of superhero IPs through film, television, and gaming, and thus began brainstorming ideas for a new superhero game. Eventually, they chose Gotham by Gaslight as the next game to adapt. The game would have followed the original story closely, with only a few minor changes, like the addition of new characters and plot elements. Day One Studios would prepare a pitch for the game to show off to THQ, a major publisher at the time. But before they could pitch the game, they needed to put together a playable prototype. For the next couple of months, Day One Studios would put together this early prototype of the game, which gives us a very good indication of the experience they were trying to deliver. The game fully captures the dark and gothic aesthetic of the original story. The map seems expansive, indicating that this may have been an open world game, or at least an open area game. Even within this gothic labyrinth, Batman stands out. He looks incredibly muscular and defined. One of the best elements of this character model is the cape physics, which folds and moves around in incredible detail. The developers clearly poured millions into the cape alone. In terms of actual gameplay, we can make an educated guess just based off the controls. As you can see, there are several dedicated buttons for certain actions, such as turning on a flashlight, leaning left and right, throwing a grenade, aiming and zooming, firing, reloading, cycling through weapons, and slow-mo. Now I think we've all come to the same conclusion. All these controls are representative of a traditional shooting game, specifically a third-person shooter like Max Payne, Alan Wake, and the Uncharted series. One other indication of this theory is the fact that the enemy models are shown holding what appears to be shotguns, placing more validity behind this idea. In the game, the lean left and right buttons were likely used to peek through cover. The reload and firing buttons indicate that a firearm type weapon was primarily used. We can infer that this weapon had something to do with the batarangs. Batman either threw the batarangs or used a weapon that could shoot them out at high speeds. Batman also had access to other tools like this grapple hook that could be used to traverse the city and take out enemies from high vantage points. Batman also had access to a bolus that was likely meant to restrain enemies This Batman game clearly heavily relied upon shooting type gameplay and a heavy use of gadgets. Physical combat was less of a priority as there's only one button that was dedicated to melee. Even the slow-mo button, likely inspired by the Max Payne games, was intended to help the player during intense firefights. Day One Studios was primarily known for making shooters after all, so they likely wanted to stick to their expertise instead of straying away from their usual formula. In short, Batman Gotham by Gaslight was a third-person open-world or area shooter where Batman must use his abundance of resources to fight off enemies and track down the infamous Jack the Ripper. This is obviously a very unorthodox approach to a Batman game. Nobody has ever envisioned Batman as a third-person shooter, so why was this game cancelled? Well, unfortunately, THQ were unable to acquire the publishing rights for the character, likely because Eidos Interactive owned the rights at the time.